I would normally, thank you, I would normally have this all fully ready to go and behaving in a totally professional way. Where's my laser pointer gone? Ah, there it is. But because I had to abandon, or it seemed sensible to abandon last month, I've hardly gone back to this talk and I can barely remember what I was going to talk about, so this may come out a bit garbled. But anyway, I thought I'd do something which is basically a bit of a nostalgia trip for me and for several other people who hopefully here tonight in the audience. It goes back to 2012 and it's part of the excavation of the Paddington cellars, which you all know about, of course. Um, and the rest of you may find it interesting. I just enjoy showing off some of the photographs that were taken at the time. And there will be quite a lot of photographs here that none of you have seen. Um, and the people who were there digging out will enjoy, hopefully, seeing them again. So going back to 1999, we first rediscovered in July 1999, we first rediscovered a way to get back into these lost cellars in Paddington underneath the set of Williamson buildings that had been demolished many years earlier. And following that, we had 13 very frustrating years while we negotiated with Liverpool City Council for a lease on a small plot of land above where these tunnels, cellars lay, to allow us to occupy the site, small plot of land, and to start excavating. So we had 13 years of, I don't know, just treading water. We were allowed to go in anytime we wanted. We were allowed to potter around, move stuff from one place to another with the little bit of space that was available in these underground spaces that were almost full to the roof. And but we couldn't take anything out. Now this here is the little plot of land we're talking about. It's on the borders of the car park of the student accommodation that was known at the time as Liberty Living. We have a sublease from them now over this little plot of land, this little grassy area, not very large at all. And we had been allowed to build our entrance hatch here to secure it, put in proper steel staircases going down below. We could go in any time we wanted, but we couldn't take anything out. And about 2000 or so, or soon after, we had assumed that we would get a lease quite shortly from Liverpool City Council. How stupid we were. And we commissioned a set of steel gates, so lying here on the grass, and fence posts to be installed in this spot here in the wall, in the fence of Liberty Living, ready for the day when we would be allowed to have our own entrance, fence this place off, and a skip would be standing where those people are standing now. And they sat there for 10 years or more, at least, probably a lot more, down below, unused because we just didn't get the opportunity to do what we wanted to do. But then finally, in June of 2012, we got our lease signed, a 99-year lease, and we moved into overdrive. We had a lot of work to do on the surface here before we could start digging the place out. But at this particular occasion in June of 2012, we installed those gates, and behind those gates, there's still a piece of wall and a fence which have to be taken out. This gentleman here in the red overalls is Alan Minette. He's a steel fabricator with a business in Birkenhead. He'd already constructed this steel hatchway for us. I don't know whether he designed it or not, or whether it was our design, but he built it and it's still sitting there now. And he designed and built these gates. So as soon as this was in place, we had to strip off the land that lies in that little plot there. And this is over a tunnel we call the mile-long tunnel. It's a joke, but that's what we nicknamed it. And it sits directly under this piece of land here. And we needed to strip off the surface down to the roof of that tunnel so that we could put down a concrete raft reinforced with steel mesh to take the weight of a skip, because in the end we would have 159 skips on that plot of land. There's some complications here. We found part of the actual roadway, part of Paddington, or its pavement, which we hadn't known was there. But it turns out that Paddington was a much wider street in the early days when the Williamson building stood here, and it's now been narrowed down. So this is part of the pavement. Somewhere around here used to stand a lamppost, which we ended up having to move. And all sorts of other utility cables and things underground there, which caused a bit of a complication for us. But we got it all sorted. And then the first batch of concrete went down in that spot, laid there by, or delivered by Mr. Spot Mix. And we're just levelling it off. And that's where our skips are going to stand. And then following that, we put down a second concrete pad here. Now, alongside our compound as it becomes, from that line there, we would have a wall and fence, and along there we would have a wall and fence. And this was the, or still is, the student footpath and gate that hundreds of students use to walk in and out of the student accommodation there. But we were allowed to take up part of the footpath, and we laid this concrete raft part way across the footpath here to reinforce the ground above the tunnel, and then put everything straight. And here we are now. We've had the rather nice perimeter wall around two sides of our compound professionally put in. I believe the first people who did it make a complete mess of it. It had to be taken down and done again. I can't remember the full story behind that. But now our steel fence and posts are being installed, and it won't be long before we have a completely self-contained entrance. The reason why we had those two concrete pads, but not one in the center area, is because we had this rather nice feature, a drop hole, which we believe was probably a coal hole drop into this tunnel, which was probably used as the coal store for the set of 4 tall Williamson buildings that were standing there. And we rediscovered this from the surface while we were stripping off down to the tunnel roof. We hadn't seen it from below because the tunnel below this was so full of rubble permanently. So here's Steve, one of our very early founder members, a wonderful man, no end of skills, and he's building up the brickwork from the coal hole drop, which you'll see from underneath in a few minutes. And he's using original Williamson brick that was salvaged from down below, brick from the demolition of the Williamson buildings, no doubt. And he's building this up to the surface. And now we're having a nice set of paving slabs put down. This man here is Ronnie Challoner, no longer digging with us, but was with us for many, many years. And he's an expert at paving. And he's cutting the paving slabs to go around the drop hole. And then a shot here of another thing that Mr. Alan Minette designed and built for us, this D-shaped, don't know what you call it, sits at the level of the top of the slabs, and it will have a D-shaped steel cover that can be chained down over the top of it. But it does more than that. It comes with a set of posts and chains so that when we have it open and in use, we can make sure that it's safe and nobody's going to fall down the hole and fall 12 feet down to the floor of the chamber below. And that's now just being cemented in and everything's being finished off. So we're nearly there. Now the fence around our perimeter has been completed, pretty much done. And all we've got to do is paint the railings. That was one tedious job. So this was all taking place between June and November of 2012, and then we really got started. So when you go down below, down the gantry steps, this is what faced you. This is the entrance to the what we call the mile-long tunnel. And as you can see at that point, it's absolutely full to the roof. The wooden shuttering that's here in the foreground was probably about 8 foot high. You needed quite a tall ladder to climb up it and over the top to get behind there. And we made a start on emptying this tunnel out and gradually taking the wooden shuttering down as we went. what we've been doing over all those years of marking time was moving stuff around within the chambers down here while we investigated and searched in different corners, trying to figure out what we had, how far it went, and how deep it went. And a lot of extra material was brought up here and piled in. We piled it in as high as we could get it until you couldn't get any more in. It was already full to start with, but it's a lot fuller by this time. So we started work and we started emptying that chamber. That's looking into it. And there you can see the drop hole in the side wall of the roof, where probably coal was sent down from a hole in the pavement above. And at the moment, the level is still quite high. And I've got a whole set of pictures here, which I'm just going to show you quickly because I've got them and I think they're rather nice. And as you can see, this chamber was full of all sorts. There's a lot of soil, but an enormous quantity of broken York stone slabs and lumps of rock and brick and all sorts of stuff that's probably just been bulldozed into this chamber at the time in 1939 when the Williamson buildings were demolished. And it's only a guess, but I believe that most of this York stone slab has been taken up from some of the local streets, where the courthouses stood. I think had York stone slab floors rather than being made with granite sets like most of the thoroughfares were, because they didn't have much traffic. They were all dead-end streets and very little traffic. So York stone did the job, and it was cheaper probably. So we found tons of this stuff and we started emptying it out. And we didn't want to part with it. It felt as if it should be useful and could be valuable. People could make all sorts of fancy paisley craving paths and things like that, or build walls with it. And we didn't want to throw it away. It was costing us too much for every skip to be just throwing it away. So we stored it all down below. And in the end, it became very useful. You can see masses of it there. But as we dug down, obviously we were digging from the rear, pulling it forwards, getting it out. Most of this stuff was coming out in buckets, 10-litre plastic paint buckets, and we were carrying them up the steps, 2 flights of steps up to the skip. And it was a back-breaking job. It was not a lot of fun. But as we lowered the level a bit further and it became possible, we started using likes of a gorilla bucket here on a rope to haul some of the bigger lumps out that we weren't keeping, but we did keep as much as possible of all that York stone. And as we went down, we started finding some rather more interesting things. These ranging poles are there just to give you scale. Each white and each red area is 0.5 metre, so you're looking at a metre pole there, 1.5 metre pole here. And we're still pulling the stuff down from the rear, pulling it backwards and getting it out. And still at a very high level. That's the top of the ladder. You have to climb up to get over the top of the spoil heap just to climb in there. And as we went down below the level of all this York stone, we started to find interesting artifacts that had been discarded and thrown away. I have to assume that all this was thrown away pretty much in that time around 1939 when the building was being demolished. Could be that some of it was earlier, but there's no way of really knowing. These wooden 1 metre square frames are just to give an idea from an archaeological point of what we were finding, how much stuff was just in 1 little metre square there. There were so many interesting things that people had discarded. Why would anybody throw away a complete stack of plates and a dish like that? We just don't know. Now that one, you may not be able to make it out, but there's some kind of jug there, I think. There's the top of a large bowl. Here we have a cobbler's last. Teapot lid, teapot. Here, knives and forks and spoons. There's another fork. And alongside here, I remember this vividly as these things were being uncovered. A little collection of old-fashioned spectacles They were the sort of wire-rimmed round spectacles that all young children were given on the National Health if they couldn't afford anything better. You always knew who was wearing National Health specs. Why anybody would throw these away, I don't know, but there was a whole bundle of them, some of them still with their lenses in and some without, all just hurled down there and discarded. We had to treat this like an archaeological dig. We were told that we should do that. There's an iron, another teapot, another lid, a jug. And we recorded everything that came out, exactly what level, in what area. We photographed everything. We took it away. It was washed and cleaned, and it was photographed. So and then we put it into storage. And then a lot of it eventually came out, and we display it down below in the chambers. So it was a wonderful voyage of discovery, turning up all this stuff. You never knew what was coming out next. And here on the surface, we've now got to the stage where we've rigged up a support here. We have a gin wheel, rope and a hook on the end, and all the materials coming out that way and up from below and into the skip. Much easier than carrying buckets up the stairs. It was all hard work, but this made it somewhat easier. And of course, the empty buckets had to go back down. It only needed one man with a shovel in his hand to fill these buckets quite quickly. And it needed a whole team of people feeding empty buckets to him, carrying empty buckets away, over to the hoist, hauling them up, unhooking at the top. And then usually there was a team of 2 or 3 people emptying all these buckets into the sieve here, which sits on the top of the skip. And everything was mashed through. We made sure we didn't miss anything. Anything that was missed down below during the digging process, we found it in the sieve and we salvaged it right down to the tiniest button or coin. And then, of course, we relied on the skip man, Mr. CCC, was with us sometimes once a week. We were only digging on 2 days, Wednesdays and Sundays, but sometimes we filled a skip in 2 days, and we needed this man to be here, taking the full skips away and dropping off a new one whenever we had one full. Otherwise, we would have come to a complete standstill. And of course, if we couldn't afford the skips, we would have come to a complete standstill. But fortunately, that never quite happened. This was quite a tight fit in our gateway here. And Paddington was a very narrow street. The Bear's Paw pub on this side of the road very often had cars parked in front of it. We had to put a set of barriers out on a Tuesday night to make sure nobody parked there. Otherwise, the skip wagon couldn't get in on Wednesday morning. And we wouldn't be digging. Looking from down below, opposite the entrance to the level 2 chambers, you can see there's still a good bit of material left in there. Long way to go still. And this one's slightly out of sequence, but I wanted to show what happened. We reached a point along the roof of this chamber where the roof, the brick arch roof, had been damaged, very badly damaged. And all of a sudden, material from above started falling down on us. And we panicked and we stopped digging very quickly. And when we measured up, we found out that we'd gone too far. We were well over our limit, and we were digging halfway under the student footpath up here, and it was starting to come down. So we had to do a lot of work from this point. Really complicated process, to my mind anyway. We had to build up with concrete blocks in that area and stuff as much material in as we could above it. And then we made the decision that we were going to repair a part of this damaged roof structure. It was only several feet, but it was a major operation for us because this is not how it's supposed to be done. These things are supposed to be built over a wooden former from above, whereas we had to do it from underneath because we didn't have access from above. So our Steve Moran, the expert, could turn his hand to anything. He constructed this semicircular wooden former, which is propped up on concrete blocks at just the right height. And then these planks were inserted and they were all held in position exactly right just under the roof with wooden wedges that were screwed in. And at this point, Steve and a team of experts were left to get on with this job while the rest of the team moved on down and started clearing out on level 2. And we came back to this job later. This, I think, must have gone on for several weeks. I can't remember exactly how long, but it was quite an operation, and they did a really good job of it. You wouldn't have known by the time they finished that this had been built up from below instead of above, and it worked. It looked like a really strange operation, but Steve had it all in his head, and he made it work. And as you can see, we're propped up with the wooden former there on a pile of blocks, concrete blocks, and on that side there's a wooden wedge knocked in there. And then, of course, once the whole thing is completed and the mortar's gone off, you can just tap a wedge out, drop the former out, and lower out all these wooden planks, and everything stays up by itself. And you see how all these planks are held up in position there, and probably regularly having screws taken out and moved slightly up or down to accommodate the roof as it was going in, brick by brick, every brick mortared and mashed in. And that's looking right at the end. I don't know why the black polythene is there, quite honestly, but there's obviously a reason for it at the time. And I just love these pictures. Never get tired of looking at them. There's looking out from underneath the wooden former out backwards down to level 2. So after we'd done that, we made the decision that there was no possibility that we could carry on digging out this tunnel. We knew it was longer. We wanted to carry on, but we'd already gone halfway under the student footpath. And a few yards beyond that, there's a vehicle entrance to the student accommodation. So we knew they were never going to allow us to carry on digging underneath a vehicle entrance where there would be large vehicles going through. So we made the decision that we were going to build a permanent wall here. And that's where all this York stone that we'd salvaged came in. Wasn't to my liking at the time. I still thought that we might have been able to carry on digging, but I was a new boy then and they weren't listening to me. So this rather permanent wall went in, and that's the first bottom stage of the wall. Very neatly built with the broken York stone slabs. The next section set back another 18 inches was going to go on there, and then the third section up to the roof behind it. Now the first stage is built, second stage is built, and the shuttering's where the third stage set back again is going to be up to as far as we'd repaired the roof, I think. You won't really be able to see it, but to the left of that opening, we'd reached a point just before the collapse happened where we'd reached a corner in the sandstone bedrock wall of this chamber on the left-hand side, and there was a 90-degree turn, and we were just starting to wonder what it was that was leading off that way. There was something, we didn't know what. We did a little bit of digging into a hole, just soil in the darkness, and we couldn't make out what it was. And then, of course, the collapse happened and we had to get out very quickly. And looking at that one, you can see what we've done there. Where there's an opening to the side, we have actually set in a concrete lintel there because we realize, you can see from this picture, that there had been a side arch in brick going off to the left of this chamber. Not a lot of it left, just that little bit of brickwork there, but he told us that there was a side tunnel. And so the concrete lintel was set in, and then we could fill in the gap with brickwork and more of the York stone below. And we always intended that maybe we would come back there and investigate it again sometime later, although we couldn't do it at this point in time. And there we have it when it was completed. That's our three-section wall built up at the end after repairing the roof. And it was so frustrating knowing that this chamber goes further. And I might as well tell you the story of why we named it the mile-long tunnel when it's only a few yards long. But Charles Hand, the historian, in 1926, when he brought a party of visitors down here, the Daily Post story that went in the paper was totally exaggerated, and it said that they stumbled around in a nightmare maze of tunnels and passages, and they walked for over a mile in one direction without finding an end to it, which of course is total and utter rubbish. But we now realise, having got to the bottom, 60 feet below ground with nothing leading off in any other direction, we realise that this chamber is the only one that might go in or any great distance. I don't believe it goes very far, but it does go further, and it may connect with other chambers, like the one going off to the left from here. Who knows where they might lead to? But that's why we named it the mile-long chamber, very tongue-in-cheek. There's a group of the lads, probably at the end of the day, hard day's digging, posing for a photo against that end wall and obliterating it completely. We did come back here in it was 2020. We completed the dig in Paddington in November 2016, and then we moved off and started excavating down at the Williamson FoWT site. And by 2020, beginning of 2020, we'd just about done everything we could at that time, but we were bored and we didn't want to stop digging. So we made the decision to come back here and have another look in that corner, although we'd bricked it up. So we came back there, I think it was February, March 2020, and we cut a hole out where we'd infilled here underneath that lintel, and we started digging in there. And we spent many months digging there through 2020 and 2021, because we managed to do it just at the point where COVID struck. And we were stop, start for 2 years, I think, in between bouts of COVID and moving on to all sorts of other jobs as well that we had to do later. We always like to be busy, but this was one that we kept returning to. And we opened this up and we went as far as we could. That's looking through that hole. And we found interesting features in there. The brick arch of this chamber leading off to the side of the tunnel to nowhere. Sorry, not the tunnel to nowhere, the mile-long tunnel, has had a brick arch roof, and we have seen the spring line of the brick arch and a few bricks clinging to it either side of here, but the whole arch had been destroyed, and there's nothing left to be seen except a very big pile of bricks in the bottom, which we took out. We had to make the decision to put in this scaffolding structure with the wooden shuttering, because beyond that point we're off our patch and into the car park for the student flats. And if we'd carried on digging there, there's nothing but loose rubble, York stone, bricks, stone, all the stuff we've already been digging out, with a bit of tarmac on the top. And we realised that if we'd kept digging there and holes had appeared in the car park and cars had started slipping down, they would have been looking at us thinking, what are those people up to now? And we would have been in trouble. So we just had to make the decision to stop. There are still masses and masses of that York stone in there, all just waiting to fall down on you if you let it. So the scaffolding structure had to go in, and that's as far as we could go. We found a little side chamber, which is very interesting, but there was nothing else, and we just had to stop. Unfortunately, we were hoping to find a staircase leading down to lower levels, because we know there is another deep cellar system somewhere just below here, but we didn't manage to find it. So just a couple of photos here, because I thought they were rather nice. This is completely emptied out, and while we were still digging, of course, there was a fair bit of dust in the air at times on some days, and with the strong sunlight in the summer streaking down through the drop hole, makes for a rather nice picture. And that one there, one of our diggers, Gavin, standing in the rays from the drop hole, and that's just caused by dust in the air. And that's now what it looks like today. Our new display there has just gone in recent months, and we're working on others. We used to gather people up together on the gantry stairs where there wasn't very much space to talk about the story before taking them down. Now we have new displays in this chamber, far more room for a dozen people or so to stand around and listen to the story of Joseph Williamson and the Paddington cellars. And so way back, probably before we even completed the job of digging this place out, a slab of the York stone that we'd been pulling out was selected, and it was sent to a stonemason. I don't know who it was, but it came back like this. You wouldn't know it was the same kind of stone, would you? This has been squared off beautifully and polished, and the stonemason has cast this and put on the words FoWT, founded 1996, just for us, and that's now set into the end wall, sitting up there above Joseph Williamson and his wife Elizabeth on the end wall. So that's the story of how we came to empty out the first stage of the Paddington cellars by clearing out this little chamber, only just below the surface, and should have been easy, but there was a lot of excitement when the roof came down and a lot of complication. But that's the story. That was happening during the back end of 2012 and into the beginning of 2013. So I hope you found that interesting. One or two people in the audience here will remember and were part of it, and I think we all look back fondly on the 4 solid years we spent emptying this place out. It was really a very interesting job. Wouldn't have missed it for the world.